This week, last year, QPR won their first home league match of the season at the eighth attempt against Stoke City. This week, almost exactly a year on, QPR will set out to win their first home league game of the season, this time at the ninth attempt against Stoke City. Will history repeat itself? We can only hope that it can. And we're going to discuss that huge match shortly. But first, our last match, a wholly predictable 2-0 defeat at Leeds, which sent QPR back to the bottom of the table. We should discuss that one. You had 2 weeks to reflect on it, Dave. How was that afternoon in Leeds?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably better than I expected, which just doesn't sound great because considering we lost the game anyway. But you know, we did quite well. We quite defensive. We stopped them. They didn't really have that many chances. They had a couple early on, but we ended up giving away one really soft goal in the first half to give them the lead. But we did have chances to get level. I thought Field should have scored his one. Seller definitely should have scored his one. At least hit the target, and the game could have been different. But it is grasping at straws a bit to say you've lost 2-0 and you're thinking, oh, that was all right. But it was better than Middlesbrough. That's all we could say. And, the result was what we expected. We always seem to lose at Leeds anyway.
Yeah, definitely. It panned out as we all expected. I think I ended the last show by saying it would be 2-0 and QPR would be lucky to have a shot on target. And like I say, that's exactly as it panned out. It's a result that leaves QPR 11 games without a win, 12 in all competitions. It was kind of like the trip to Burnley, wasn't it? But Leeds were just not as wasteful as Burnley. And without Jake Clark-Salter at the back, we always looked a little bit more vulnerable to conceding. So just totally inevitable. First time in 14 years as well that QPR failed to score for 4 away games in a row. We've actually only scored 4 goals in the last 9 games anywhere. So it's not hard to see why we are rock bottom. And after Burnley, which was only 4 weeks ago, I commented that the fans in attendance were totally behind Marti, singing his name all the game. What was the vibe at Leeds?
But they were still behind him. There wasn't as much singing his name during the game. I think most of us were just bored for most of the game because not much was happening. But I think people are still behind him. Most of the talk to me seemed to be about above him, about Nuri and Andy Belk and all that kind of stuff, saying they should be the ones to carry the can. And I think most people are still with Cifuentes. Given the injuries we've got at the minute, the signings haven't worked. I don't think all the blame should be on him. But I'm not sure the fans' view is going to be taken into account if we keep losing, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I asked that question because sometimes there can be a big difference between people who are at the games and people online, very vocal. And undoubtedly, there is a bit of a bigger divide now. And even on our last show, the comments, there was a lot more in favour of sacking Marty, and some people label him clueless, things like that. And it's all fair enough. I mean, this match against Stoke, it is so big. Do you think Marty survives if we lose here and against Cardiff in midweek?
Possibly not. I think they're two massive games they got coming up. I think if we lost both of them, I think they're probably going to look to make a change because that's a long run without a win. Even with the injuries, I think if they did change manager and any new manager's got the same injury problems, you've got Dembele out for months, you've got other players that are off for a couple more weeks at least. It's not going to be easy, and it's a difficult position they're in. But yeah, these are two massive games you've got coming up. You can't keep losing and keep your job as a manager. It's a results business, and much as I want him to stay, if you lose these two games, I think they'll change managers again.
Yeah, it's the pivotal week, isn't it? It feels like it. If we can get 4 or 6 points, maybe from these two games, it just changes the
Yeah.
picture completely. But if we lose both, the polls that maybe currently are in favour of keeping Marty, they're going to naturally take a swing the other way. I really hope we can get the results we need because I really want him to stay. I just argue to anyone who's thinking about sacking him is going to be the answer. Unless we get to the root cause of why the club just seems to stagnate and we always end up back here every 12 to 18 months down the line, we might get an initial boost like we did under Michael Beale, like we did under Marty, but it just never seems to maintain. And a big question I have is, what can anyone else do? You've already alluded to it with all the injuries, etc. But would anyone seriously come to work with Christian Nori with the Brad press he's getting?
I mean, for the money, I'm sure they would at the minute. Managers are out of work. I'm sure they'd take the job, but it is a really difficult job. I just look at that squad, taking a manager out of the equation. How do you get this squad to win games at this level? The last 20 minutes at Leeds, I was watching what's on the pitch, and it was only 1-0. I just couldn't see how they were going to score unless Leeds made a mistake, and that almost come true in the end. But I just, I mean, they like you said, they could get a new manager in, they could have a little boost, and that puts us back in it again. I just don't think it will last. I think Cifuentes is a really good manager, and even with him, you've seen these things don't last too long at QPR because at the top things are so wrong, and the recruitment at QPR going back decades is rubbish. You know, they keep every time they keep making poor signings, putting them on long contracts, spending lots of money on them, and then they've got their hands tied behind their backs for the next couple of years. They've done it again this summer. I, I just don't see how. I don't think it's obvious that the manager is a problem. This isn't like it was under Ainsworth, where there was clearly there are easy changes to make in the team to make it better, which we did last year. I just don't think it's the case this time.
Yeah.
I'd personally be keeping Cifuentes.
Yeah, I would. To me, I agree with you. We've made this mess, and it just feels like we need to ride it out and trust Marti to either turn it around or bring us back from wherever we end up. Because you make a good point. When this time last year, we were saying get rid of Ainsworth, and you knew Marti Cifuentes could bring Chris Willock back into the fold, change the formation, etc. There's not a lot a new person could do. Like, to me, I agree. And people keep saying like get Mark Robbins. That's now the natural one to turn to, but to me, there's just no way he comes to work with Christian Nori. It's just not going to happen. And it would help as well if we had owners who were actually interested and invested day to day. It does feel like we need owners with fresh ideas. I know they've invested a lot of money in the club, but it does appear like they've kind of given up on us, doesn't it? We never hear from them. It's just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they could, they'd sell up tomorrow. I mean, I'm sure they would. I mean, I've got no doubt they've got the best interest of the club at heart. They've been around a long time, you know, but they do need a change at the top. They need fresh ideas, just fresh impetus, really, just to try and change how things have gone in recent years. Yeah, so I just don't know where they go with it at the minute. It just all looks so depressing at the moment. So taking the manager and everything out of the equation, you just look at the team and the squad they've got and the options on the bench, and you think this is not a team that's going to win many games in the Championship. I don't think they win many games in League One either. And a new manager isn't going to fix that unless
Yeah.
he's got a massive war chest and brings in 20 new players.
Yeah, to me, the owners just, like I say, it feels like they've lost heart. And probably after the 10 to 15 years they've had at the club now, it's probably understandable. But they're going to reappear probably if we get 3 points on Saturday, and we'll hear tweets from Amit
Mm.
Bhatia again. They only ever seem to come out when we are winning, don't they? Let's have a look at the Stoke match then. Like I say, huge game. And it would be ironic that it's almost exactly a year on. Then we last beat them for a home win last season. It's now our worst ever run at home at the start of a season. No wins in 8 home league games. We just desperately need that monkey off our back. But Stoke are not going to be as easy as some think. They're 10th in the form table, 13th overall. New manager, Narsi Pelash, I think it is, was a bit of a left field pick, former Norwich assistant. What did you make of the appointment and the job he's done so far?
Yeah, really surprised at the appointment. I thought they would have kind of stuck with Schumacher. They only got him a couple of months ago. I couldn't quite work out why they changed. I didn't think they were that bad under him, but they've done okay. They're kind of doing what Stoke can normally do. I think Stoke on paper always look a good team at the Championship, and some weeks they can look really good, and some they look terrible. They never seem to get the consistency right. I saw them on the TV the other week. I think it was against Derby at home, and they looked really good at times. They created a lot of chances, but then Derby equalised, and they kind of fell apart again. I think they went on to win the game in the end, but they're a funny side. They never have the right consistency. That's why they're one of the teams you've got to target to beat, really, if you're going to try and get out of trouble.
Yeah, I think he's gone in there and just made them harder to beat. They've only lost one of the last 8. Good management, isn't it, going into a club doing that? And the only match they lost was away at Sheffield United. I just worry that some people are going to think this is a more favourable fixture, which it technically is when we've played recently all the top 6 sides. But they're no means a team out of form or there for the taking. Any match for QPR, to be honest, is tough, isn't it? As usual at Stoke, there was a lot of transfers over the summer. Any standout players they've got for you?
Not that I can remember, and I'm trying to remember they brought in now. To be honest, you put me on the spot there. But they always seem to sign a lot of players, Stoke, every year. And like I said, nothing seems to change when they're a bit like us. It doesn't matter. It seems to matter what they do in the summer. They end up in the same position every year. Maybe things will change from a bit more this year, but the league does look a bit more open than it has in recent years. But like I said, I think they're going to probably finish around the same place they have the last few years.
Yeah, they've been pretty much glued to our old favourite 16th place ever since they got relegated 5 or 6 years ago, haven't they? Personally, I think they maybe are in a little bit of a better place now. They did well to keep hold of Berger. He was one name that stuck in my head
Mm.
from when we faced them last season. He was a very good midfielder. Tom Cannon, he's always looked good in this league. He could be the difference maker, which is something QPR lack, isn't it? Someone to change the game. The goalkeeper as well, he tops the league. I had a look for saves per 90 minute. He was at Rotherham last season. He was a good signing for them as well. I expect them to just be a little bit more consistent than they have been potentially. Before we get back to QPR, should mention that this match looks like it's going to be played in 40-mile-an-hour winds and heavy rain. Does that favour either side?
Might have favoured Stoke a few years ago when Pulis was manager. I'm not sure it helps anyone. I will help anyone this weekend. I think it just adds to it what is probably going to be a bit of a scrappy game from our part. And I don't think it's going to be pretty a pretty one at the weekend. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we can't win in any other conditions, can we? So we might as well give it a try and gale force wins. But it is far from ideal. I mean, especially if we put like a plan together over the last 2 weeks and then you can't even get the ball out of your own half and it's blowing back towards you again. It's definitely going to influence the style of the game. In terms of the team to face Stoke, shock horror, we've actually had some injury update news from the club. We should have Kenneth Powell and Morgan Fox back for this one. But I think we were all hoping maybe Michael Frey would be available and he's still a few weeks away. What did you make of the injury news?
I do think it's good that they've released the injury news. I mean, it kind of buys them a bit of credit. I think normally you go to the last few weeks we've been going to games going, oh, he's Frey back today, is Clark Salter playing today, and then 2 o'clock hits and the teams come on your phone, you're like, oh, they're all missing again. Is that the team? And everyone's on a downward moment. Now we know what the situation is at the weekend. We're down to the bare bones. Our Powell's back, Morgan Fox is back, but the main ones that we need back are not there. So I think it will mean the crowd get behind them at the weekend and kind of accept it a little bit more. But the news isn't good by a stretch of the imagination. We desperately need some of these players back. I don't think we were particularly good when they were all playing the start of the season, but we're nowhere near it without them. And especially Frey. I mean, there's just no other options up front at the minute. Sellers struggling, and you just need competition for places there at the very least. And that's not good news that he's out for at least a few more weeks.
No, that to me was the biggest blow in the news because we need more attacking threat, don't we? We're not scoring goals. He also helps us to
Mm.
press a bit better, doesn't he? And play higher up the pitch. I know statistically we need Colback and Clark Salter. Everyone knows the stats of how more impressive we are as a team with them in it. But Frey not being back, even if it's for another 2 or 3 weeks, that's another 4 or 5 games. That's a big loss. Kenneth Powell coming back in, that helps with the balance of the side. But with Clark Salter out until next month as well, would you be leaving Sam Field at centre back, or is it time for Liam Morrison to be starting? He's back from injury. We know he's been on the bench last few games.
I mean, I'd give him a go. I mean, it can't get much worse, can it? Let's be honest. We've got with the league already. I mean, he's looked okay when he's played, I think, and it would put Field back in his more natural position in midfield and probably give us a better balance in there as well. Yeah, I'd give him a go and try him in there. They've brought him in as a centre half. I mean, he must be, if he is fit and he's available, he's probably be looking at it going, hang on, a midfield player's playing centre half. Why am I not playing? So, if he's fit and available, I'd play him. I'd play him at the weekend. So I
Yeah.
don't think it can, it's not going to get any worse, is it?
No, no, totally. We signed him. If we signed him, play
Yeah.
him. He looked good in the cup games to me. So definitely, and mainly because, like you say, you get Field and Ran back together in midfield. We probably need that, especially if the conditions are going to be what they're expected to be. Obviously, without Chair and Dembele, though, the big question is where's the creativity going to come from?
Oh, I don't know. I don't think there is much, to be honest, unfortunately. Um, I imagine it will be Saito and Smith playing on out wide. They've done reasonably well. I thought Smith did okay at Leeds, but again, his final ball can be frustrating to say the least. But at least he keeps going and he'll keep running at his fullback until he can't anymore. Um, so you'll have that energy and enthusiasm from him and from both wings. So I think that's probably what they'll go for. But like I say, if that's what the conditions are going to be like at the weekend, having two tiny wingers is probably not going to help us too much.
No, definitely not. Actually, that's a good point. Yeah, they're willing runners, aren't they? They give everything, but they don't exactly bring many assists to the table, which is a concern because we're not scoring at the best of times. Now, would you play Anderson or Madsen or neither for this one?
Well, I mean, in an ideal world, I'd probably play. the two forwards we've got if Frey was fit. But I suppose he'd probably go with Anderson again. Anderson's a funny one. He's just fallen off a cliff this year, and he's been so poor compared to what he was last year. But the only reason I'd go with him is because we've seen that he's done it before. He was good last season. Maybe he can recapture that. Madsen, I've just not been impressed with at all. I wouldn't trust him, especially in a game where they really need a result. So I'd probably go with Anderson for this one. But
Yeah.
I don't think either option's ideal.
No, Anderson, if we'd signed him in the summer and no one had seen him play before, people would be giving him the same treatment as Madsen, I
Mm.
think, because he's been pretty poor, let's put it lightly. If Madsen plays, he needs to be sweating blood out on the pitch, I think, because patience is wearing incredibly thin with him. And it's not going to help the atmosphere if people just notice him wandering around 10 yards off the ball all the time. Talking of midfielders, it's worth mentioning that Jonathan Varane is on 4 bookings and it's 4 more games until the cut-off. So the odds are he's going to be missing a game at some point over the next few. Overall, though, for QPR, we're now deep into November. Is there just a sense that we need to keep in touch till January and then see what we can do to reinforce?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like that again. It's basically where we were this time last year, isn't it? I think the aim's got to be get to January and don't be cut adrift. If they're uh, if they're 2 points off, I think that's probably not too bad compared to where they are at the minute. But there are some winnable games over the next month. I mean, I'll say that we don't necessarily like beating anyone in a minute, but we have got some home games where they should be targeting to win over the next few weeks. So there is a chance they could move away. But I mean, if we say every year, January is going to be the key for us. It's ridiculous that we keep doing this. That every January we have to save our season with signings, but we're going to have to do it again because there's no goals in this team, and they need new players again.
Well, definitely. I mean, the thing is, we just got to try and stay in touch, haven't we? But I had a look, and in the first week of January last year, the team in 21st had 26 points. QPR at the time were 4 points from safety. If it pans out similar to that, QPR need about 12 to 15 points from now till January to stay in touch. And we have 11 games in that time, so it's not impossible. But we're talking about a team with 1 win, which was, I think, 80 odd days ago, now getting 3 or 4 wins between now and January. It just illustrates the scale of the task we've got. And probably as well, getting those points would still leave us in the drop zone. This is just about trying to stay in touching distance of the teams, not actually catching anybody. And of course, FFP is going to be a big concern in January, isn't it? We're all going to be thinking, we're doing it now. Get to January, reinforce. There's not going to be much spending power, I wouldn't imagine, is there?
No, they spent the money in the summer. They've probably spent the next 3 years worth of money. They're giving long contracts out. They spent a couple of million on 3 different players. Was they used transfer fees for a couple of million each, and that's more than they've spent for a long time since Eze was sold. And let's face it, none of them have worked so far, have they? The only signing that's really looks any good is the goalkeeper come on a free transfer. Um, whether they'll have more to spend, I'm not sure. It'll be loans again. You've got to hope they can possibly get Hayden in on loan again to help out in midfield and somehow get a striker who knows where the back of the net is. But I'm sure nearly every team in this division is also looking for a striker who knows where the back of the net is. And they're not cheap, unfortunately.
No, and that would have been the plan in the summer and we failed. So there's no guarantee we're
Mm.
going to sort it out in January. And I've seen some comments about like getting Seller and Madsen out in January, but who's going to take them? I mean, Madsen's on a 5 year
Yeah.
deal, isn't he? I mean, at best, you maybe get someone to abroad who might take them on loan and cover a bit of the wages, but you're still going to be down on FFP. So it's not looking rosy. And there's also the debate of whether Christian Nori is going to admit he got it wrong looking at his data, and is he going to say, okay, now we want championship experience, which goes against everything he was doing just a couple of months ago. I have my doubts. We're probably more likely to end up with somebody topping the Polish league for interceptions than Isaac Hayden, but we'll have to see how it goes. And it just leaves us this week with our predictions. We need 3 points. We need a home win. Marti Cifuentes needs a win. Will we get it?
I really hope so. We desperately need a win. It'd be nice to just win a home game and have Hi-Ho Silver Lining playing for the first time in months. But I just look at what we've got available. I just can't see it. I just can't see how we beat Stoke at the weekend. I mean, Stoke are not a bad side. They've done reasonably well recently. I think it'll be a draw again. I think it'll be a tight, ugly game. I can't see us keeping a clean sheet, and I can't see us scoring more than 1 goal. So I just think it'll be a draw, best case scenario for us.
Yeah, given everything that's riding on it, you're naturally going to expect it to be a tight and nervy affair. And I think you're right saying it's going to be an ugly game as well, especially like we're saying with the conditions. Stoke have only scored 3 goals in the last 7 away games. So Add that to QPR's lack of goals and what's riding on the game, you just can't see anything other than a pretty ugly game of football. And I'm going for 1-1 as well. I can't see us outscoring a team. I just can't. Maybe the conditions make it a crazy game where it's like 3 or 4 goals in the game, but I'm sticking with 1-1, and it is just such a big game. Let's hope we can get the win because it'll just change the whole vibe around the club. Because then it's another massive match in midweek against a fellow struggler, Cardiff. Brian and George will be in the hot seat to preview that. And then Dave and I will be back later in the week to preview the trip to Watford. Will Marti Cifuentes still be in charge by then? Will QPR be back in the points? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And until next time, come on, you R's.
We know who we are. You know who we are. We are QPR.